shine, shine your light. Shine, shine, shine your light. Shine, shine, shine your light. Hello, this is Nancy Maddox, and I'm so happy that you're here. We are very excited about our interview today with an author who has a very interesting story. He's a literary writer, and his name is Alan Schaefer. He writes under the literary writing name of Aaron Shepard. We're broadcasting from WYTV7 in Charlotte. I'm in Little Rock, and Mr. Schaefer is in California, Menifee, California. So I'm so happy to have you today. Just got a few little things we want to discuss and go over, and I think it's going to be so interesting when everybody hears your beautiful story, Alan. So if it's okay, we'll need to get started. What I'd like to do is kind of outline your testimony from your childhood to where you are now and things that have happened. And if I interrupt you in the middle of it, it's because I need to make a little break for the WYTV7, or because I just need you to do a little breather, because I know that's going to take a little time. So would you mind starting at an early age of what happened? I believe you were 18 when when something happened to your mother, right?
Yes, well, I grew up in a regular, normal, I'd say normal dysfunctional home. My dad had his alcoholism, and my mom and dad were in real estate. And then I was about 16 when they divorced, a sign of the times type thing. And then I was about 18 when my mom was abducted and murdered by a drug addict. He was actually murdered by and he tried to abduct another woman, and they caught him in the act of abducting the other woman, and he committed suicide while he was being charged. So, yes. And then it's one of those things, especially back then, you just heard about it on the news. It was like it happened to everybody else's family. It was something that never really happened to your own family. So, and then I could go into, like I said, I grew up wanting to be a rock and roll singer. I grew up in music. I was in the elite choirs, singing and dancing choirs. After my mom's murder, I decided I would go to California chasing a girl in a rock and roll dream. Always wanted to be like Elvis Presley. I know you guys are, down south, a little bit down south there, so he's more prevalent. But came to California and didn't find the girl I was chasing working out, or that rock and roll dream never worked out. I ended up being in a drug world, and around a bunch of people that just was bringing me farther and farther to the bottom. And to the point that, I always thought in my youth, I could express myself and my rights to legally use marijuana and pot and all that stuff and drinking, but there is a destructiveness to a high portion of our community that affects my father. It would kill him eventually. It would kill my brother and me. By the time we were 16, I think my sister gave us 12 packs of beer underneath the Christmas tree. So there's a big disconnect with the reality there with my family in our use of alcohol and drugs. So. I ended up drugs. I was okay on the marijuana and the alcohol and even occasional cocaine. But once I tried methamphetamines, within 6 months, I was homeless and on the streets, and I was just utterly destroyed. And not only the drugs, but probably the fact that I never got in touch with the loss of my mother at one point. That I became like very mentally ill, and in the point that I started going to like county hospitals, and it was like, it's a classic thing where two guys in a coat. My friend brought me to this hospital, and these two guys with a coat came out and said, "We need you to come with us." It's like something out of a movie.
Wow! Oh my goodness, you had a interesting life and an interesting family life. You're really God's really blessed you to be able to speak through you, which we're going to talk about a little more about your books. But that's just fascinating. So on you say your father died from alcohol abuse too?
But this was later on in life. He actually ended up, like maybe about 10 years back, he would, and by then I was actually in recovery, and he was like, come on, have a drink with your old dad. And I'm like, Dad, I'm sorry, can't do it. And he, yeah, he ended up decatheter, diapers on at about 65 years old. And they told him that if he quit drinking, he would live 15 more years. And he decided 2 years later, he was dead. And it's like, it just shows you the reality of our priorities when it comes to drinking and some.
Wow, Alan, wow. I know my father too died at an early age of 62.
Yeah.
And I was so shocked. I mean, I knew he was an alcoholic and he was a mean man, but I'm the only one that stood by him out of all the whole family. And then when he passed away, I went to the hospital and they produced his death certificate, and he died of alcoholism and ethanolism, which is, it just so shocked me, you know, that people actually die of that. But anyway, let's go on. We're on WYTV7, the Christian Broadcasting Network in Charlotte. And I thank you if you're just joining us. You're getting ready to be in for a real treat. We have a wonderful, beautiful person today that we're interviewing, Alan Schaefer, who writes under Aaron Shepard. So let's continue on, Alan, with starting what happened. Explain a little bit more about the mental institution and what put you there.
Well, I started, the drugs absolutely brought me to the bottom. And it's just something where, you know, I was a cook for years in restaurant business, and I always functioned. And then drugs brought me to the point where I couldn't function anymore. And then I was homeless, and I don't know how many times I was put into county jails and hospitals. And no one ever said something about medication or about treatment or about substance abuse treatment. And I remember walking out of a certain jail in Southern California, I must have been 50 times and not having one person ever tell me, hey, maybe you should go over here. Maybe you should. And I think we're better at it as a society now, but back, in the 90s, it was a real struggle for society to deal with this. And so I ended up, one of the reasons I was also homeless is because in my delusional mental state, I thought I was someone special. I thought there was so many delusions in my head that I had to kind of stay away from people. And I always thought someone was trying to hurt me, or and I was worried about, my interactions with people. And one of the times I was in county jail, I was in, they housed me with other mentally ill patients. And with the struggles of my mom's death, I really was struggling with my spirituality about, I remember a time when I was on my rooftop when I was breaking down with my mental illness, asking God, what's this sin forgiveness cycle about? But the problem is I was standing before God and I'm not humbling myself before him. And even though I'm professing my faith in Jesus Christ and God, I think he decided to show me that other side. I think he really decided to say, Alan, I will show you how you can fall. I will show you that man within you that will fall. And so being homeless and in jails, one day in my aggravation and stuff, in my delusional state, I decided to strike out against my cellmate. And I ended up hurting him. And then he went to the hospital, checked him out, and they brought him back. And I was charged with assault with intent to cause harm. And about a month later, they came to my cell and they said, the cellmate that you attacked has just died. And he had an embolism that formed in his leg. From him being too sedimentary, from my assault, I guess, that went to his lung, and he died. And my whole world just came down around me. I was like, how did I ever become this man that had dreams of just being a normal, as long as that rock and roll dream was just being a normal person, working a normal life, the wife and the kids and stuff like that. And here I was facing second-degree murder charges as a 26-year-old man. And it's like, how did I ever, and it was like my whole world had just caved in. And
wow.
They ended up sending me to a mental hospital because I was so delusional. And I never understood whether I deserved a second degree as a charge. I always thought manslaughter or something less, but it didn't matter. That's all water under the bridge because when I finally, I've spent like 3 years as a 1370, which is when you're incompetent to stand trial in a mental hospital where you can't even base the charges of how bad off I was. I was that shuffling around mental health patient that was just with a scraggly beard on medication, and they almost made me a conservator where the courts would actually, and the system would actually take over my case. And then one day I decided to, I started to get better through medication and a little bit of treatment, and I faced my charges, and they convicted me of second-degree murder, and he convicted me because in my delusional state he said that the intent to harm. So in convicting me, he actually had to, when the not guilty raised insanity phase, because that was obvious, he actually asked, he had just convicted me because I was crazy. So, and actually the DA did not even fight the not guilty raised insanity part, which is very rare. Usually DAs will fight tooth and nail for punishment. And I'm not one to not believe in, they used to call it penance, not punishment. Back, they used to call it prisons. They used to call them penitentiaries, where you do penance. And so I was sent back to a state mental hospital, and I was by then I was starting to recover a little bit mentally. I was getting treatment. It was the summer of 1999, and I was smoking marijuana in the yard and trying to sell a little bit to get my marijuana free, because just like institutions, like society, you can get drugs if you want them. And I realized that nothing had changed. That person that if I ever wanted to, when you're locked up, really the part that was hard for me wasn't being locked up. It was the part that society I'd become someone that society needed to lock up. And that was hard on me. And because I wanted to be that good Christian. And so it was the summer of 1999, I smoked my last joint, and I've never drank or used since. And I worked a recovery program, and by that time I was starting to actually make headway in my mental health stuff. I was really getting deep into treatment.
Alan, oh my goodness.
And
that is just amazing. So that was the last time in 1999?
Yeah, it's like
that's when your restoration really started, huh?
I really believe that. You know what? Even though I made progress in mental health stuff, and even though smoking marijuana really didn't really sway me big in mental health ways, it wasn't until I think made the decision to stop drinking and using. I mean, the definition of insanity is actually repeating the same mistakes over again and expecting different results. And for me to continue to do the cycle that brought me to the hospital was not a part of where I wanted to gain my life back and that person I was back. It just didn't fit in. So I had to stop. I had to change from everything.
Okay, well, that just is it's just such an incredible story that you have.
Yes.
And like I say again, it's just absolutely fabulous that God's using you, speaking through you, through your books, and even through your testimony that you're giving today. I appreciate that so much. When I interviewed you on the phone a couple of months ago, you said that you had a humbling experience 5 years ago. And I'd like you to explain that. And I wrote a note that said blonde hair, blue-eyed baby boys.
Oh, yeah. In fact,
how you got to that.
No, well, I will briefly go over it. At one point, I was actually given a chance to be back into the community. I'd gotten to the point where the society said, you know what, we're going to give you a chance. Mental health laws give you a chance to actually, if you've done the work and you've done the footsteps and put a little time, they believe that, that somewhere along the lines you give another chance in society. And they did. And I went out in the community and I started going to college and I started doing things and doing the right things. And I'd actually touch bases with my Christian faith and my spirituality again. And that was good. And then I ended up running around and meeting the wrong girl at that time. And they didn't like it. And I was breaking their rules. So they sent me back to the hospital. And that's when I started penning my book, because I thought my life was pretty crazy. And then I actually got a chance to go back out in the community again. And this time I was smart enough to not stay with that dysfunctional relationship I had started. And that was, like I said, the definition of insanity, not repeating the same mistakes. But when I left that relationship with her and I was starting my new journey into the community, I decided to really find my roots with my Christian faith. And I was, even though I was functional and I was going to college and I was working, I hadn't found that purpose and that meaning that was going to drive me to really be that person I'm supposed to be. And I ended up going to the San Luis Rey Mission in Oceanside, California. And it's this beautiful mission. If you're ever in Southern California, San Diego area, you have to see it. And it's been there for 220 years. It's one of the most beautiful missions. And I walked into that mission, and I also started doing volunteer work there. I said, I got painting experience and everything and construction. And they're like, we need you for bingo tomorrow. And they're like, they said, but I ended up kind of touching base with my roots. I was raised Christian Catholic, and I touched base with my roots, and I would kneel in that church. I learned the power of actually kneeling before God. I learned the power of truly humbling myself before him. You know, instead of just professing and instead of praying while I'm driving and praying while I'm laying down in my bed, I would learn to get onto my knees and just humble myself. And it was about that I realized that, like, tomorrow's Good Friday, and a man like Jesus would put himself on the cross for a murderer, and he would ask God to forgive the men that were murdering him. I mean, and the level of that grace is just mind-blowing. That will crush men to their knees 2,000 years later, and women to their knees. I mean, that's just out. I mean, it shows he was true grace. And then, so I was humble. I was actually learning the power of humbling myself before grace, and I would pray. And I started praying for a child. I said, God, you know, all the years of chasing life, you know, I have no children. And then out of the desert, he says this one, I said out of the desert because she comes from the Inland Valley area where it's more desert. Like, you get a little bit more inland in California, and it's mostly desert. I would meet her, and she would, I would propose to her in the same gardens in the back. And she gave me this beautiful blonde-haired blue-eyed baby boy. My dad and her mom, I guess, was where it comes from. And then 2 years later, on his birthday, his baby brother was born. And that's just, and for me to have gone to where I was locked up with no life, to where after I met this woman, she having a good conservative Christian woman behind me, I was able to publish the book that I'd written. I was able to complete my college degree, almost complete a second degree. I was able to have my first children. We actually just recently, about 2 years ago, we bought a property in one of the fastest growing cities in California. We bought it almost at the tail end of that bottom of the market. So we were able to get an acre, .29, a manufactured and a mobile home on it. And we got it for $100,000, which is unheard of in California. And it was a God thing, and it really was. And for her to help me complete all that, and to be the wife that I really, that God destined for me to have, is just amazing. In fact, me and my wife, when we got this property, we actually said we want to use this property to help others and to help the church. And we have this little guest house that it's a 1962 mobile home that we fixed up. We thought we wanted to help people to move forward, like someone has done in my life previously, a woman I met. And so we have a new church, and they want some of the parishioners to stay there to help them. One's getting out of the Marine Corps, and he wants to be a correction officer, and we're going to let him stay there. But it's funny because we wanted to use it for God. And the pastor asked us just last week if he could park his big billboard sign on our property. So we have this 20-foot by 10-foot huge sign professing faith in Christ on our property. So wow. Really, really neat.
You know what, Alan? It's really interesting because you experienced all of God's grace and all of God's glory, and you're here to just talk about it. I just think it's just magnificent. Again, we have Alan Schaefer, who writes under Aaron Shepard, and this is WYTV7 in Charlotte, and I'm Nancy Maddox, the host of Shine Your Light Radio Ministry in Little Rock, Arkansas. So anyway, I really wish we had more time, but I'm going to keep going. You said that you wrote God's Angels and Kings while you were in the mental institution. So I guess you wrote it while you were there, and then you published it after you got out and got married, right?
Yeah, I actually I penned most of it while I was in the hospital, and then I actually had this computer that didn't the internet. And I would transcribe it over, and then the end of my first book is when I'm first meeting Tracy, when I'm actually kneeling in that church. And by then it was 100,000 word manuscript. So it was like, I had to stop and actually, I actually failed out of high school because I was 2 years short on English. And then somehow I would be this published author. My mom's would have me go, oh my gosh, my son's a published author. Christian. And actually, I actually had a choice to go with a Christian author, a publishing company, or a regular publishing company. And I chose the Christian one to actually express my faith. And they actually recently folded, though. They got sued by 2 different companies for $4 million. And I don't know many companies that actually can stand up against a $4 million lawsuit. But that's fine. I'll probably just self-publish through Amazon at this point. But my wife was actually one of the ones that helped me complete this. And when I met her, and then I'm actually, the first book is called Of God's Angels and Kings. And it has to, what's interesting is I wrote the title first, and then I wrote the book, and then they asked me for the idea for the cover. So I was able to create the whole thing, and it was nice. A lot of my spelling errors came through because they didn't do a great editing it. At some point, I'll re-edit it. But and my second book is actually called I'm writing is if I had time with a family of 4 at home. I have 4 children. I have a teen stepdaughter that's a high school cheerleader, and a oldest son that goes to community college. So and then the 2 boys. We're quite busy. But it's called If You Could Hear My Prayers, and it's about, at that time I was telling you about how I've learned to humble myself before God, and I think one of the greatest powers I've ever found is the power of giving everything over to God and humbling myself and bringing myself to my knees, and it is. It's actually my greatest gift that I can actually give to the world too. And everyone I meet, I talk about it, and it kind of baffles people that I should not be given this property I'm on. I should not be, especially the income I make. I do a lot of low income work for low income people and give them, so I'm looking in this low income neighborhood type thing, and I bless this beautiful property. And, but the thing is that I always have a philosophy that I'm underpaid, but God overpays me, and He always provides. And that's my greatest financial secret too. But the second book, the first book, I wanted to write it also to help others with substance abuse and mental health. And right now I've gone into that same mental institution. It's the largest forensic mental institution. And I go and I speak to the patients, and I speak to the families and the doctors, and I do speaking events. I've done huge outreach speaking events. The Catholic Diocese of San Bernardino asked me to do their homeless mental health and outreach at a big event they had. Me and my baby boy were sitting down with the Bishop of Seattle and another high clergy, and my little 2-year-old, just to keep him quiet, we feed him. And he likes to eat all the time. He's like, good. And so he just kept eating plate. But for me to be able to go into and then to use the gifts I've been given of recovery, the gifts I've been given of in mental health and in substance abuse, and to share that with others is a huge, and then to bring it home for God in Christ is really neat. In fact, my book was inspired to help others with substance abuse and mental health. I want to try and change someone's life before they got to the point I did, or maybe help them come back like I did. And then, but for me to really bring it home for God in Christ is neat. In fact, I've had quite a few clergy and other people tell me that they had no idea I had that in me. Some of the words that I said, it's not really me. I remember editing one time with my wife, and I backtracked it and rewrote something. And it was like the Spirit came through me. It wasn't my words anymore. It was me sharing the Holy Spirit and God's words. And that's, like I said, for it to be Easter coming up on Sunday. I mean, it's just really what a blessing for me to be, that even now when I'm talking about my works, that all of a sudden I'm talking about Jesus and His works. And that's the best gift I have.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm running out of time, and we only had a 30-minute interview, but I definitely want to have you back again. I want you to have you back again, and let's talk more about your writings, your books, and a couple of comments that I've read about you is that you're a folktale writer too, an excellent folktale writer. So I want to get into that. I want to get into your two books, you know, God's
Okay.
Angels and Kings, and I also want to get into your other writings on the next interview that we do.
Okay.
So I hope you'll allow me to interview you again. I just did not get enough goodie out of it, but I definitely think you are just a shining example of restoration and God's grace and what he did for you. And you're right, Easter week is a beautiful time for you to be talking about this. Before we go, I'd like for you to share a little bit of contact information if you'd like to.
Okay.
How they can, you know, how they can find you if they need you.
You can find me actually on Facebook under Aaron Shepard of God's Angels and Kings, or on LinkedIn also under Aaron Shepard. And I have a Facebook page that actually links to the book, and also to just under Aaron Shepard, which is linked to the book. And that's probably the best way. I think social media is a big tool for us to connect these days. It's almost easier. And you can always contact me under Alan_Schaefer at att.net too. If you'd like, I can send you an autographed copy of my book or something if you contact me. I only have like a case left before I go to another publisher. So I would like to also put out the thank you, Nancy, for letting me do this and for the work you do. This is it's about I love the way the internet's become a tool for us to profess our faith in God, and the work you're doing. This is really, really neat for you to outreach to me, to tell my testimony. And you know, I met a guy the other day, and it was he was talking about his purpose. He hadn't found this grand purpose yet. I said, well, you know, there's people like, you know, Moses that are on the fallen part, and but they rise to this big part. I said, but most of the thing is most of it is the masses in between, in the middle, that God is really after and using. They're the true tools. It's like we're the tools of Jesus. We're the ones that he calls to. So, and that's what it's about. It's not what church you belong to, whether it's Catholic or Christian. It's about being a disciple of Christ and sharing your love for others and God. That's what it's about, I think.
I totally agree with you, and please allow me to thank you again for taking a little bit of time with me today. I'll be back in touch with you a little later on, and I hope you have a beautiful Easter. And
thank you so much. You too.
I hope you have an Easter egg hunt for your babies.
We're actually making Easter eggs, and we're going to a friend's of ours house today and planting some flowers, and then we just had new plumbing put in the house. So we put the water heater failed, so.
Yeah.
I was saving for carpet. See that? God provides.
Okay. Well, thank you so much again, Alan. I appreciate you. And I'm going to be back
to
set up another one, you know, in a couple of weeks.
And then next time I'll let you see my children. I'll run them around here for a little bit.
Yes, please do.
Yes, I will.
Love that.
I didn't know. My wife has got so much things going on. Yeah, I work an 8-hour day, and she has it harder than I do. She takes care of my boys. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, we appreciate you so much, and I just am so thankful that I got to know you and meet you and hear your testimony. Okay.
Yes, thank you so much. You're welcome back to my home anytime.
Thank you, Alan. Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Shine your light, shine, shine, shine your